Hi, I'm Malcolm Stern, and in conjunction with my friends John and Sandra Wilson from Online Events, we're creating a series of podcasts called Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. My book of the same name was conceived and inspired by the suicide of my daughter Melissa and the journey that took me on and the internal resources that I found. All of my guests will have a story to tell around overcoming and ultimately thriving through adversity. Special thanks to the band Stairway, Jim McCarty and Louis Chinamo, for the use of theme music from their album Medicine Dance, and my engineer Owen Santiago. I hope you enjoy this series, and thanks for listening. So welcome to my podcast, Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, done in conjunction with my friends John and Sandra Wilson at Online Events. And I'm very happy to welcome today another of Online Events presenters as well, Carmen Rendell, and from SoulHub. We'll hear a bit more about what SoulHub is in a while. And Carmen's had a very sort of speckled career in the corporate world, in banking, and in all sorts of other things. And then finding a sort of sense of purpose, which she's now involved with. So, Carmen, welcome. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about what took you from the corporate world, which is obviously a world that is easy to get into, much harder to get out of as well, into what you're doing now.
Yeah, very nicely put. I think for that very reason, well, firstly, thank you for having me, Malcolm. And yeah, for that very reason, it took a while, let's say. There were many attempts to try and jump ship, but I think I had a final push. I kind of remember the final moment of actually, even I've talked about it before, but going to Richmond Station with my ticket to go to work. It was almost a full body experience of like, I just can't do this. So I think my mind had got there, but my body hadn't yet, or the other way around even. But then when I got to the station, I rang my boss Claire and said, listen, I just need some time out. And off I went to Richmond Park, which has been my, let's say, safe and exploration place for the last 15 years,
Right.
to find my own answers. But along the journey, I guess there was, quite a prominent moment around deciding after being in a relationship for 10 years, I got married, and within 6 months decided that I didn't want to be in the marriage. So, which, as you can
Before we
imagine,
go on from that, let's just take a look at that because it's quite a big thing to suddenly go, I've known this person for 10 years and then I'm married and suddenly I don't want to be married. Was there anything specific there and how was that for you and for him?
difficult all round. I never think one party gets away with it any lighter than the other. Um, I guess even as I look at some of the themes, Malcolm, it's kind of like, almost getting to a final point, like having some realization. And I think these things are sitting there, but they either don't have the permission or I've not given them the permission to be voiced.
Yeah.
And I guess that even as a pattern throughout life, it's like, okay, do I have permission to say this isn't working for me? And really in many ways, nothing wrong with him, obviously. And what I was looking for in a relationship, I probably didn't even know at the
Yeah.
time quite what I was looking for. So I just knew it wasn't right, but
Yes.
actually trying to put your finger on what that thing is challenging, right?
It's interesting 'cause there's a similar sort of pattern here, isn't there, with you leaving your corporate work of suddenly going, this isn't working for me. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas a part of it is aligned with this is what the path should look like: marriage, good job, corporate, good money, blah blah blah. And and you've managed to sort of break yourself free of that. You've also done, I know, quite a lot of traveling in that time as well. And there's a great line in a Doors song that said, there's only four ways to be unravelled. And I can't remember the other three, but one of them is travel. And there is something about putting yourself into a different environment and experiencing yourself differently. Suddenly the world can feel quite different. And I wonder what your traveling did for you and where you went.
Yeah. I think a pattern of conforming, right? And actually, I know I have quite a strong rebel streak within me that is guiding me along the way. And I guess travel hugely opened up my sense of enormity around the world, of just, I guess, almost to some extent losing yourself in different communities. I remember really clearly being in Vietnam, and people talk about, those kind of crossroads with all the mopeds, and And I'm like, oh, I'm just an ant, like if you went up to space and you look down, no one, I could get lost in this city and no one would even know I was there. And that felt quite freeing, really freeing, I guess, I could reinvent myself in every town or country that I wanted to go to. And so there was a freedom, permission again, and freedom to be myself. And meeting people with just such broad experiences and views of the world and different cultures. And I loved that. I loved dropping into other people's worlds, which is probably why I'm a therapist now, right? Just sitting
Yeah.
with them and hearing their stories and what's made them who they are. And more than anything, I think a trust of people that actually along the route, sometimes I didn't know where I was going next, and I would just wait for the next thing to appear. And then you'd meet somebody and they'd be like, well, have you been to Patagonia? And I'm like, no, I didn't really know much about it. Okay, well, I'm going. Do you want to come with me? Yeah, I'd love to. And it worked like that.
That's great. And it's like trusting the world, trusting your path to open up in front of you.
Mm.
And obviously you've done that with the organization that you've created. So you've created an organization called SoulHub. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what its aim is and where you're going with that?
I like that you ask. This is one of the things I've tried to let more go of more and more, Malcolm, is where are we going? I don't know.
Yeah.
I do remember coming, and I guess that's the difference of being in corporate. I was very much working on a marketing side, on the strategy side, looking where we're going, looking at the vision, putting purpose, putting goals, measuring those constantly, and that's one way to be in life. And actually, what I wanted to create with Soul Hub, I believed, I guess, more in the softer, organic process, and allowing, and I think particularly in these times, allowing that to unfold and be in co-conversation with that so that, it has an essence of helping people understand themselves better and creating healthier and happier communities. How that comes about can be in, so many different ways. So I guess it is teaching me as much as I'm learning about the world through a different lens. And sometimes that's challenging. And even I guess going back to that kind of bringing people together, right, who maybe see the world from the same like-hearted places where we kind of have ended up rather than necessarily like-minded. So we want for something different and better, and yet we don't really know quite what that is
Mm.
yet.
Well, it's been
So,
very much a part of my exploration to create what I now see very clearly are the Buddhist terminology of sangha, which is communion with others of like mind. And it
mm,
feels to me as though you've established a sangha. And I think in the world being as precarious as it is right now, and it feels like everything's up for grabs in many ways. We need our stability, and it feels like you've created what I would see as a lighthouse somewhere that people can come and know that they can be part of something and be with people who are not going to judge them, presumably.
no, that's nicely said. And I guess as you say that, I was thinking back earlier about, I guess, even what I was looking for throughout my life, a place to belong. And I remember kind of, in my late teenage years, it was around Christianity. I was brought up an Irish Catholic, and thought I'd found some sense of home there, but something didn't sit with me. I think more of the sinfulness of some of our human
Yeah.
actions, and I rebelled against that and didn't appreciate feeling as if I've committed something I shouldn't do, yet it's the way I am as a human, and that rejection, I guess. And then, through sport, I found it in hockey or travel, and, I'd find it in different communities. So I kind of got a sense, right, that there are many communities that you can belong to. And it really wasn't until I went to psychotherapy and went to School of Wizards, I walked into a room and thought, oh, here's my people. That's the first time I think I ever felt like that.
And that's very interesting because it's almost like it's unquestionable when you really do enter into an environment where you feel at home. you feel like you can take off all your armoring, then you know that you're in a safe environment.
Mm.
That's presumably one of the things you do with the groups that you run, with the organization that you're involved with. You're creating a safety of environment for people to show up and be themselves.
Yeah.
And you've gone a fair distance along the road yourself. And I know you don't have plans about what's going forwards, but if you were to sort of think about how this might develop, do you have a vision for it?
I mean, we are literally in a bit of a reconstruction. So, Andrew and I have, just put I guess I feel like we're in a bit of a clearing phase. That's where we feel like we are. We feel like we've
Yeah,
built something over 10 years, and we're reassessing which are the bits that naturally feel flowful and desired, I guess, by others, and then those areas that are not. And I think, sometimes for me, and running a community, I'm quite, I'm not out there with my voice everywhere. I'm quite a quiet, you know, background kind of leader. Andrew's probably more the performer than I am, which is a great compliment to have the two of
yeah,
us at the helm. And I guess we've also come to realize that we expend, I guess what originally I was like, we are greater as the as the sum than we are of the parts. And but then I've also realized that actually even within the well-being spiritual community, people are often very attached to the way they see the world. So you have so many differences even in this space, and that we have been trying to service everyone. And by that, I mean, it's just, everything ends up slightly fragmented. And it is difficult, probably, like as you said, what are you actually looking to achieve? So I feel like everything from the back end processes, we're letting go of our email system, we've cleared up our invoicing system, we're filtering and seeing where that is. For therefore, where do we step up from there? So it's almost feel like we're going back to the ground a bit. It feels like the right time for that. And we don't
yeah.
quite know what that is yet, what it looks like, but you
I think
know,
in some way, when we're doing something that we're inspired to do, then we also have to trust the process that actually life will offer us a signpost as we go along the way. And
mm,
you said everything is synchronicity, and I've noticed in my own on my own journey where there are some similarities. I was very involved with, I was an estate agent with some very prestigious estate agents in central London for a while, and I could have earned great money, and something in me said my soul's not being met.
mm,
And then I went on or I am on a journey. I found it in psychotherapy, but found it in running groups. But I can see something similar for you as well in terms of that actually you could have had a very simple, sort of comfortable life, which is what a lot of people would go for, and you've chosen a path that's stonier, rockier, and actually needs more faith, which is interesting because you mentioned that you had your faith within Christianity, within the Catholic Church for a while, but actually you're having to find faith in something else now, which is really in yourself to be able to navigate a path and to find meaning in what you're doing.
mm. No, that's beautifully said.
Yeah.
We this summer we spent the summer on the road, and I think that's what I love about travel because it does remind you. Andrew always talks about, one teacher who told him about kind of just grabbing the apple or the fruit at the right time.
Yes.
It will come as you're ready. And so, even as simple as like our car broke down and we needed a battery, there was a guy who was like, "Can I help you start the car?" We're like, "Perfect." Gets us to the ferry. Then, as we draw up to the ferry, I'm like, "Oh my God, our angel is literally behind us." And there's a guy who's in his pickup van, and we said to
Wow.
him, where can we get can you have a look at the car? And he does, and he's like, okay, well, I can call my mate on the other side of the island. He can get you a battery. But I said, well, what do I do? Do we leave the car on or off on the ferry? We don't want to stop everyone and get stuck. And he's like, just leave it on, and then we get to the next place and the AA man comes and he doesn't come for a few hours. So we get to go for a beautiful walk up to see Loch Lomond. Then we get to Glasgow, and then the guy who helped us, was amazing young lad who just, went, here you go. And at 6 o'clock, we didn't know where we were staying. And then I'm trying to find a bed for the night, Then we find somewhere a beautiful place in the Lake District. And it's almost like you can't do the next thing until you resolve this. Then it will
Yeah,
show up. Then it will
yeah,
show
that's
up.
true. Yes,
And
yes,
it's and I'm like, that's when I feel alive.
yeah,
This rocky path, but I don't feel like there's any other choice. I don't know if I'm sure you
right.
feel the
And I
same,
get
right?
it.
It's
Yes,
like I look at lots of friends who've got millions of pounds and big houses, and we have nothing really apart from the most important thing, which is ourselves and our trust in life.
yes.
And that's what I feel everything is reminding me and teaching me, that we are, and I am, we all are okay
Mm.
if we go to that place.
Yeah, my father's mantra was always, well, if you've got money, people will listen to you, then you've got, then you've got a place in the world. And I've had to disprove that by actually going through a process of actually just knowing what works for me, where my soul longs to be.
Mm,
Essentially, I've just said soul, and SoulHub is what
mm,
I'm aware of. So it is about feeding our souls, isn't it, really?
yeah.
And the theme of the podcast is very much about how adversity has educated us. And I'm wondering what you've been through in your life without wanting to sort of like draw you into a place which is over revealing, but what adversity has come your way that's actually made a difference to the direction you've taken?
It's really interesting because I was almost getting a bit hung up on adversity, to the extent I was like, is it really adversity, or, is it big enough adversity, right? Is
Yeah, it's
it,
all big
is,
enough.
and
That's
of
what happens in
course
groups. People often sort of like someone will do a piece of work about something so extraordinary, horrific that's happened to them, and someone else, well, I can't really talk about my thing because it's nothing compared to that. But actually, we are challenged by what happens in our lives, and whatever it is, I bet you it's a big enough adversity. So let's go for it.
well, I guess as I look back and I literally went, oh, this at this age, this is, and I'll talk about it in a moment. But just, I also, as you're talking about, I feel like the path, none of it's by chance, as in like, is all meant to be part of me becoming the woman or the person that I am meant to be in this lifetime. So I've come to that place now in my 50s. So I do look back on things differently, and I also look at them differently as they happen in my life. What am I to learn from this, or what am I not aligned, where am I not aligned,
Yeah,
where am I not opening my eyes, all of those things. But obviously that's in hindsight, right? So when I look back in my life and I see it differently, I guess, the marriage was a big catapult or shift for me. I think I would have stayed. Well, no, I wouldn't have, because it's all meant to be as it's meant to be. But as in at that time, I was in a secure job in a bank. I'd done 10 years. I used to sit with a friend, Adrian, most days and go, what are we still doing here? Like, can't we find something else to do? And we didn't know what it was. We just knew this wasn't for us. And therefore the breakdown of the marriage, I think, then sent me, packing. I literally put a backpack on, had an amazing boss at the time who just went, how long do you need off? And I'm like, a couple of months. And he said, call me in a couple of months, let me know. And he was a Mormon actually who'd had 4 kids and I was concerned about telling him I'd had an affair, and I decided I didn't want to be in the marriage. And I thought, he'll sit with judgment of me. But actually, he was like, go, I'll miss you. There'll be a job for you at the end of it, which was incredible.
that's lovely. So
Um,
it's often we often sort of see affairs as sort of like, oh, this person's transgressed, they've done wrong, they've sort of like they've fucked it up or whatever it is that we want to say. But actually, it's very much a call for help usually. If you're looking to be met outside of this union that you've created,
mm.
something's not working. And I don't know whether you were able to talk things through with your then husband or whether you just sort of went, this is not, it's a waste of time.
Took me a couple of years, Malcolm. I didn't know at the time, right? Again, I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't. I didn't understand what I was looking for. And I would say that was a big part of my self-understanding. So off I went, I literally backpacked, I'm going. And I guess, that being away on my own, eventually I had the courage to come back, and try to taught to him. He had moved on, and I don't, and probably didn't really want to hear from me. But I had to clean up for me, because at the time when I left, I didn't tell him I'd had affairs. I just said I wanted to go. So he didn't have the full story. And obviously, even in that process, your friends are going, you can't tell him that. It's fine. He's moved on. I'm like, I feel like I have to. I have to clean up and be honest. At least then he knows it was part of the reason, or part of the what was going on. I still didn't at that point understand the psychotherapeutic reasons,
Yes.
and also I guess the biggest thing is the forgiveness for myself. And I would say that took probably another 5 years to actually look and go, I was looking for love in different places, in the wrong places, but that's
That's
what
the
I was
thing.
looking for.
Yes. And I think that's the thing is that we look for love, but don't even understand what love might look like. And
Mm.
so we're sort of like, it's almost like we're sort of blind for a long time. And now you've moved along quite a lot in that, and you're now with your soul mate, presumably, or
Yes.
become cellmates, but this one's a soulmate. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And and then I was single for 10 years, really. And still playing out some patterns of that, still looking for it in the wrong ways. And knowing, again, it's not necessarily about the other, it's about me, and me finding my love and acceptance of who I am, with all of those, integrating, I guess, all parts of me. That's what I feel like life is about. How do we find ourselves, the whole self, and how do we love and, let go of the guilt and the people pleasing and all the other aspects that get played out in life. And then finding someone who you can meet at that deep soul level and walk that path
yes.
with them, in all your nakedness and rawness.
I think that's true, and I think there's something about this whole concept that we have a romantic idea, particularly fed by Hollywood and a whole lot of other areas of what love ought to look like, which ought to be swooning at the thought of this other human being sort of coming into our environment. And actually, the reality is that relationships are hard work. That's not to say that I'm being unromantic. It's more to say that actually, I think if we go into relationships, we've got to be prepared to do the work. And I'm wondering whether the work was ever actually accessible for you. So it's almost like you go to your husband and want to sort of say, this is what happened, and I want to sort of just own up to this and blah, blah, blah. But I'm wondering if during the course of you being married, there was sort of that recognition came upon you that actually it wasn't possible to do the work.
I remember, I think it was about a week before my wedding, I said something like, "Don't you wonder what life, like, what's the point of it all?" And he went, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know."
Mm,
And so I knew I couldn't articulate what might be going on for me. I knew I kind of closed the door and went, okay, that's not here, unconsciously. And I would find it in other places, talking to other people, in the arms of someone else, because it wasn't accessible there. That's all it was. We're in different places in life, and I couldn't separate that out. And I didn't, and therefore, probably a bit like Andrew, I wanted to integrate again all parts of me, right? How could I not bring this part? Because I guess in some ways, I used to feel like the weird one. I
yeah.
was always like the slightly odd one out, and it used to be like you're a little bit weird. And so to find somewhere eventually with, School of Wizards, and then to find my people, and for me to accept that I'm not weird, I'm just me.
Yes.
Um,
And actually, in order to be fully met, you have to have someone who's willing to be with who you are without you having to create a fabulous disguise. It's
yeah.
a great line, a great song of Bruce Springsteen's, which says, "Is that you, baby, or just a brilliant disguise?" And I think we disguise ourselves,
Yeah.
and then we find our way into relationships. And then, if we're lucky, we'll find someone with whom we're able to sort of go through the obstacle course of relationship.
I think we
So
both
what's
quickly really early, we sat down together actually with Andrew Wallace and said, um, we can keep doing this with different people, which is what we'll do. Andrew had been in and out of many relationships. I'd had 10 years on my own. So I knew I needed an other to be my mirror and my biggest teacher. And so we had a framework to go, you're my person that we're going to opt in to do this next level of soul searching work, and
Yeah,
for us to both grow. And as you said, it means, we it's going to be confronting, right? It's going to be like the hardest thing we're going to have to do, but it's also the most healing journey. So, yeah, that for me is about the what a marriage or a companionship is. As you say, it's not falling in love, and people
yes,
see it like that. They're like, oh, you've got romantic dancer who's like all sexy and beautiful and and got a deep soul. And I'm like, yes, he is all of that, and he's also my teacher and me to him.
yes,
And I do feel really blessed that I have found that in
yeah.
this life. You know.
No, that's pretty. I
Um,
mean, that is pretty amazing because I think we often we settle for something not knowing that there's a whole lot more to us as well. And so I know what I've done in relationships, what I've seen clients do in relationships, is that you suppress a part of yourself in order to fit into a box that doesn't really fit you very well.
mm,
And if we're wise, we'll find our way um, to see what the signals are, what the signs are that lead us on our way. So for me, there has to be a connection both at a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. So all those levels have to be in play to some degree. You don't have to be utterly aligned. But if you sort of go, what the hell is this person about? It's not really a good formula for sort of a lifetime partner.
no,
I
no.
just remember also when I was an estate agent, I remember I was in my 20s and my boss's secretary, who was in her 50s, said, me and my husband, we've realized that the key to relationship is deep companionship. And I thought, you boring old fart. Yes. As I've arrived at a later stage in my life, I realized that actually that is ultimately what we seek by being with another. And there's a whole raft of things that go with that. But deep companionship feels very important.
Mm, mm,
And you've
yeah,
obviously had that right now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel the same. Someone once said to me, like, contentment is sitting with your cup of tea and feeling at peace.
Yes.
And, a big part of my life has been adventures. I've sailed from Australia to China. I've walked to Everest Base Camp. I've done, big travels and big, hikes. And, what am I looking for?
Yes.
And yet, can I, some parts of me still wants to do some of that. That how can I do that and also be here and now? And feel, I think, as you say, feel at peace with myself. For me,
Yes.
that would be a lifetime's. I'm ready to go when that's done.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think there is. It's that the choice is to really enrich ourselves with life experiences and just sort of go, well, it's a bit too frightening for me. I better have a nice, comfy hidey hole. It's more that can we allow ourselves to follow life's experiences, but also to recognize when actually we've got something that's worth resting in and staying with as well.
Mm,
And
mm.
so, what would you say that adversity has taught you along the way? What would be a
I think, well, I think you don't get away from it in life. I think it's part of life. I really do believe that it's here to teach you whatever, that you're on a wrong path, or that actually how resilient and strong, or able we are to cope with. Um,
yes,
to cope with things. I remember my mom once saying, like, God will only put on your shoulders what you can cope with. And sometimes, well, in challenge to that, some people can't cope with it and choose to opt out of the world. And so, I'm not sure I fully believe it, but it is, there are many lessons in it.
yes,
And I just think, none of us get away with everything, there's grief, there's suffering, there's pain, there's joy, there's happiness. Like it is the full spectrum of being human.
Yes.
So, why would I expect that I'm going to avoid that,
Well, I used to tell
Um,
myself when I was younger that because I was a good person, I mean, this is a load of rubbish, but because I was, this is what I thought then, because I was a good person, I won't have to have all the suffering that a lot of people have, which is absolute garbage because it's not about what happens to us, it's about how we manage what happens to us and how we allow it to change us and impact us and grow us
mm,
as well.
mm. Yeah, yeah,
And
no,
then
I
we have
agree.
the capacity then to help others in that journey as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes, we all process in different ways, even knowing that. And for some people, as you say, they use that as a superpower to help others.
Yes.
And I guess, yeah, why did I end up doing this work? It's because I love to see when people see for themselves that they have a different choice in life, that even from that place, life is transitionary and it will move and shift and change, and as painful as some things are, that they will move maybe beyond or inform something else or, actually to just be in dialogue with someone and to witness and observe that with them is, I think, again, a real privilege to do in life. I don't,
Yeah.
I think I got to a point where I was like, I was selling sweatshirts for Jack Wills in Hong Kong. It was like my last job.
Nice
And
brand.
yeah, but going back to that, like literally, I left there and I went, I can't do it. And I rang, and all my bosses get these calls where I'm like, no, can't
Some
do
great
it
bosses from the
anymore.
sound of it.
No, that was another great one, Claire. I was like, no, I'm done. She was like, well, could you at least stay just till this date? And I'm like, all right, I'll give you that. But once my heart has left once I've realized my heart's gone, it's
Yes.
kind of like, okay, I see this for what it is, and there's something else for me. So, and I think, yeah, a bit like you moving from your state agency, it's like, okay, there's what a gift in life and how we, that I can move through it. And now in my giving back, I guess. But it also is always, and I always say as clients, it's like it's for both of us. I get just as much from the work I do as they do.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. Um,
I
you
always feel
know,
bad taking money from them because it's like I'm having a rich exploration and being paid for it.
Exactly. Just learn, like, what can be better than trying to understand this humanness, right? Of like, what's the key for you and me, and and every day you're just constantly learning and growing through the work, and it's great.
I think one of the big things that I've realized as I've gone along the way is that understanding takes a long time to sort of lay its seeds in us and to educate us. And it's like, I've always wanted things to happen straight away and then been frustrated and thought I've got it wrong rather than it's brewing, something's brewing, which is bringing me to a different space in myself. And I think ultimately the whole purpose, I used to have a flyer on for my workshops, and the quote I had on the front was Robert Louis Stevenson, to be who we are and to become what we can become. That is the sole purpose in life.
Mm,
And that actually means that makes a lot of sense, actually. And interesting, I
mm.
used to put SOLE, the sole purpose, but I think it's SOUL, that's the sole purpose of life as well.
Yeah, yeah. And who are we to know what that is,
Yeah.
you
And then
know?
we find what it is. And then, our lives then have some meaning. But ultimately, I think we're probably in service. And if we're in the service of making money, then we often get blinded to. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with money. I think it's actually very useful to have enough to be able to do what we need to do or want to do.
Mm,
But I think there's something about recognizing that actually our lives have meaning when we are serving something bigger than ourselves.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which you're clearly
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. And I was thinking as you said that, like along the way, I thought I would have a family in terms of children, my own children, and that didn't happen. And there was a period where that was painful for me, like I couldn't understand. And yet along the way these days there are decision points where, I could go get a sperm donor, or I could adopt, or, there are different ways. But deep down I kind of knew that I wanted it to be with my soulmate.
Yeah.
That's was what I wanted. So that needed to come first. and then life has, presented a different path for us. And so, again, you go, I don't know why sometimes, we don't know why. But, it's maybe something greater than us does. Would I be doing, maybe this is what this life is about for me,
Yes.
being more in service. So that's, of course, it has to work out like this. So how can I let that go?
Yeah.
And go through whatever that is, a grieving process, but and then be like, okay, this is this is perfect.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. And do you and I sort of tend to see what it's been interesting to observe over the years what comes my way as a therapist, what sort of issues come my way. And they're often issues that I'm working with. So, for example, after my daughter took her life, and I wrote my book, Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, based on that, a number of people came to me who've been bereaved by suicide. They didn't even know I'd been bereaved by suicide.
Mm,
But that it's almost like we energetically put out something that feeds into what it is we are overcoming and traversing in our own lives. And I'm wondering what your clientele looks like, if there's any sort of like pattern in that as well.
yeah, no, I hugely agree. And also that for them, right, you're like, oh, that's going on over there, over there, over there in a different disguise,
Yes,
so yeah, I think quite openly, I think guilt is something that keeps showing up. Sometimes I label it the Catholic guilt, which I'm not sure is necessarily always welcomed, but that sense, I get an element of people pleasing, doing the right thing. How do you find that balance of doing what you need to serve you, but also kind of being a loving, compassionate, caring person in the world? That I think sometimes can feel in opposition to each other.
yes,
And so really observing, and part of this work with SoulHub is shifting more of the balance and the energy back into the work that Andrew and I are doing for ourselves. It's almost like we're not quite been looking after ourselves, but looking after others. And that
again, there's a
can run
delicate balance there, isn't there? That if you just giving out, you get exhausted and
exactly.
become of no use.
Yeah. But what comes up for me is guilt. And what,
Right,
so
okay.
then it's like, well, you should have done this, or, that means you're this, or, I mean, it's relentless, right? I mean, everywhere you look, like, oh my God, I feel guilty about I didn't call that person back. I feel guilty I haven't checked in with them yet. I feel guilty that I didn't choose to do that for the weekend, and you see it and you're like, oh my God, this is like in everything, and so at the moment, obviously, a lot of my clients are coming with can I put me first here, or I
Yes,
feel guilty about, and it feels like the world is rife with this sense, this heavy sense,
yeah,
that it's not okay for me to, it's not selfish, it has to start with what works for you. And actually, every time I've done it, beautiful things come in.
yes,
If I say no to something, then something like unexpected arrives. And I'm like, oh, see, how much more evidence do you need? And yet still not believing it sometimes.
yes, yeah.
So, that's and that's probably been with me 50 years. So I'm still learning it, but I'm
And we do. And
observing
I
in
think
different ways.
I think it is a slow process. I think we learn something again and again and again. It's sort of like we sort of refine it. As I often say to people, like life is not a trajectory that goes like that. It's circular, and then we confront the same issues again, but
Mm.
we have more resources to deal with it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you go, I thought I dealt with that. And you're like, oh,
Yeah, no, no,
flipping
no,
out. Here it is,
no.
back again.
In 10,000 lifetimes, you might be all right. Something along those lines. And we're coming towards the end of our discussion and our engagement. It's been really lovely having you on the program, Carmen, as
Thank you,
well.
Malcolm. Thank
So,
you. You've been good.
the question I always ask is, what is the particular dragon you've had to slay? What's the hurdle you've had to overcome in order to be who you are now?
Mm. Well, I guess the first thing that comes up is is guilt, but I think going back to the weirdness, right? Or the acceptance, you know. I don't know if this is a bit broad, but it feels like a real personal journey to accept all of me. That's always confronting,
Mm,
which in many ways shouldn't be, because it's we're all unique, but we're all different. But to, I guess,
But
to therefore
intellectually, we
love
know
myself
that, but
deeply.
it's much harder to actually absorb
Exactly.
it at a visceral level, isn't it? So,
Yeah. So and I guess to love myself for who I am, you know, that feels like my life's journey, is to find love and acceptance of who I am in the world. And
and I think that's quite a profound statement, even though it's sort of, I know it's quite vulnerable as well. I know to say that too, but there is something about that. If we don't love ourselves, how can we possibly expect someone else to love us? It's almost like we want them to do the work for us of actually making us lovely, and actually, ultimately, the final arbiter is ourselves.
hmm,
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're on the journey. There's a lovely, lovely line in the song, which is, "I'm on an endless journey through eternity. Peace, be still. There is nowhere to rush." So you're on that journey through eternity,
Nice,
and
nice.
yeah, I'm glad you're doing the work you're doing out in the world. So
Thank you,
lovely to see
Malcolm.
you, and
Thank you, you too. I need some of your lines. I love your one-liners.
they just pop into my head. I'm very lucky, actually.
No, great.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I can't remember where anything comes from. It's like,
No. Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
thank you very much. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Carmen.
also,
See you.
for sharing this space today.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. See you then.
Bye.
Okay, bye.